wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful
Guyana will become the next Dubai, and we, the citizens of Guyana, are super excited to benefit from our homeland the same way the citizens of Dubai benefit from theirs.
This is what life is like for citizens from the
Guyana will become the next Dubai.
Guyana, with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful Guyana.
Good evening, viewers. How are you? It is a pleasure to be on Globespan. Thanks to Mr. Singh for having us, for hosting us. We have an interesting discussion this evening and an interesting panel. What we've been trying to do recently is to avoid the back and forth of a conversation where there is a moderator and there are guests who pretend to expertise and give their opinions, and we are trying to create a forum where there's a round table where all of the individuals who are on the panel will comment equally and will exchange ideas and thoughts. Tonight we have with us two people who are well known in Berbice and increasingly well known throughout Guyana. Mr. Gobin Harbourjan is a businessman, a vocal commentator, a political activist. I hope he continues to be a political activist, based in Berbice. And Ms. Samantha Reed is an entrepreneur, a businesswoman in the field of contracting, and has more recently come to prominence as the first female head of the Berbice Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Reed and Mr. Harbourjan, thank you very much for being here and for agreeing to share your views on what promises to be an interesting discussion. I am Tim Jonas, and I am the only non-Berbician here, although I hasten to tell you my family comes from Berbice a generation ago. Our discussion this evening turns on shortages, perceived shortages of labor in Guyana, the issues facing companies and businesses in the area of human resources, and how this is impacted by migration and competition and increase among businesses. Gobin, can we start with you? Do you feel that it is true to say that there is a labor shortage generally in the commercial field in Guyana? And can you give your views, and perhaps with focus on Berbice, where I know you are active and intimately knowledgeable?
Yeah, a little correction there. I'm an activist for development and ideas, not a political activist. But we do have a labor shortage, but that's come with migration. Once you have a high migration rate, well, that will reduce labor. And you in Berbice, as you want me to touch on Berbice, Berbice is predominantly agriculture. Yes, you have other businesses and construction and stores and a few manufacturers beside agriculture, and they are finding it a little difficult with laborers. But I believe, or I know, we have three private sector chamber of commerce in Berbice, and those entities make up of businessmen and farmers. But as much I would have read it in the press lately, I think Robert Prasad, I saw me say something about shortage of labor in Guyana, but I did not see anything from the private sector themselves come out from either one of these Chamber of Commerce and Borbis and address that, or come up with some solution to the government. Because I am a strong believer, private sector, private business people must not depend on government for labor shortage. They must take the lead role. Maybe they might not be the correct one and engage government. That's my views on that.
Ms. Reid, do you agree with that? That the labor shortage in Berbice possibly, and in Guyana at large, is more myth than reality?
From my experience, thank you for the question, Timothy. From my experience in the construction field, I would speak on that. I think the shortage there is technical. It's more technical than labor, if you know what I mean. We're because Guyana was focused so much on like being people used to focus morely on being a doctor or a lawyer. Our technical capacity is not as wide as other countries because we weren't focused solely on tech or telling our kids to study to be an engineer or study to be a chemical biologist or these things. I think we're more short on technical skills or technical personnel, I would say.
Okay, so I think you raise an interesting point which touches on what Robin mentioned. It's a bit simplistic, isn't it, to say, as we saw the publication by the government saying that we need 10,000 workers in the country. There's a shortage by 10,000, and we need to review immigration policies. It certainly is simplistic if you just look at that as a number. And we all recognize there's huge unemployment in Guyana. So you have the inconsistent situation where they're saying we need people to come and work, but we got enormous unemployment. And of course, to me, you've hit on exactly the reason, that the capability and the capacity of the existing workforce is completely divorced from the real needs of the industries which are growing. So that you got people who know how to swing a cutlass, you don't have people who got any technical ability. And I hear what you're saying about the shortage of technical know-how. The thing is that we have had technical institutes in Guyana for many years. Why hasn't that worked? And why hasn't that helped to meet what is obviously a growing need in the technical area, the area of technical competence that we're floundering in now?
I think we have seen many of our students, many of our technical students migrate because of various reasons, maybe the salary scale and so forth. I think this is from my experience. I'm speaking, knowing people that went to the Technical Institute, might have graduated in, say, electrical engineering, but the salary scale that our locals pay those guys are different from if they migrate. It's like same thing that happened to our nurses. They migrate. They get out their qualification. University graduate, how many students per year? 2,000 or something? And they go away. Because why? I think those are the issues that we need to look and see why that our technical people migrate, even if we are training them here. That's one thing.
May I?
Yes, you can interject.
Migration is not a today thing or a yesterday thing. It's been decades now. Now, let's look at a foreign country like the United States or Canada or England. They make it so attractive to get a visa, or more easy to get a visa, and they're attracting the skills workers, and they're taking advantage of it. Now, I don't believe that is because of a higher salary. Maybe way of life. I mean, that could be one of it, that they will have a better life there, or they're seeking a greener pasture. Now, if you look, how many people in Berbice are skills workers? You most to me most are laborers who work in the estate. In the rice sector, we have 60,000 acres of rice in Berbice alone. 60,000 acres of rice, which shrink rice farmers. We have less rice farmer, but the few rice farmer what we have, they are planting bigger acreage. Now, if the way the laborer is migrating, even the laborer is migrating because the mechanical system for labor in other country is more of a press button. People here in Guyana, it's still, manual. You throw a bag of fertilizer in your back and you have to sprinkle it with paddy. So we have to look what is the root and cause of the migration. I don't think it's salary, because a guy might work at 150, 100 US a day in the US, but his rent gonna run him up about 15 to 2,000 US a month. A guy in Guyana might work 50,000, 10,000 a day. He might live more comfortably here, but maybe way of life. I think about that. But one of the important things and factor, which I mentioned earlier, Jonas, is that if business people or private sector is pushing secretly in people's ears and hide behind a wall that we have a shortage of workers in this country, why isn't the private sector again come out and push ideas to the government? How do you fix that? Government cannot come and find workers for you. I can name 3 or 4 big employers in Berbice and maybe other region who seek elsewhere people from other countries. India, Nepal, Venezuela. I know a guy told me he rather hire the Venezuelan, he get more out of them than a Guyanese, because the Guyanese will look at the time to go home. Those people got to work to mind the family. Same thing when people was migrating to the US. They go there, the Jewish factories, and they become better. To me, we can address how do we fix that. But I still hold the Chamber of Commerce to be more proactive towards the government, push ideas to them rather than throw back and become a cycle of members, which does not represent a big open of business people. So I believe that's what I can remember when Jerry Gavaya was the president for the private sector. I think those days he was pushing government hard, but he not push them in a negative way. But I don't know. I believe, Jonas, that some of these members are maybe towing the line and does not want to say things. So how are you going to fix problem like that? We can only talk about it.
Well, if you let me put the ball in your court. If you had the ear of the government, so you had that lobby power, and you're talking about selling ideas to the government and discussing with the government for a solution, what would your solution be?
Get these employers, private sector employers, to pay these workers full NIS, which is over 60% is not being paid. Give them some sort of benefits. I don't know if rice farmer paying. I know millers are paying. I don't know if rice farmer paying workers NIS. Contractors are paying the NIS. You have to get policy. You have to get these things enforced. If these people go to work at a construction site and get hurt and go home and then they can't work the next day, they're on their own. Same thing with in the rice sector. A guy go to the background, he's getting his foot chopped off or hurt his back. What happened? We have to get businessmen and major players in the sector to start to do the right thing. Like what happened, even if somebody working McDonald's in the US will get coverage. I want one person to tell me, or one businessman to tell me, don't go to work at them store, full-time or part-time is getting a benefit, maybe few. So if the overseas company making it attractive, they will go. But that doesn't solve the problem. It's, as I said, private sector have a body. You have the Chamber of Commerce, and then you have the Private Sector Commission. They need to sit with government. We can only talk, and put it, but like I said, I did not see a release from the private sector saying there's a shortage of labor. None. I see it from Robert Prasad.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not sure that the cause and effect are linked. It's true that to me that employers as a whole in Guyana cut corners in terms of their obligations to their employees. So they do what they can to shortchange them. They don't pay NIS, they don't declare them and pay PAYE for them. They don't give them their full benefits when they fire them, send them off, and that kind of thing. They cut corners, and there's no doubt about that. But do you think that that is the reason that we have such a huge migration issue where people
Of
are
course,
and have been desperately leaving Guyana for the past 50 years because they don't get NIS paid for them?
no, I'm not saying NIS. I mentioned earlier, if you missed it, I said maybe they have a better way of life. What improved community?
Right.
Municipalities,
So,
NDCs. Let me go there.
so
If, if,
it goes back to my question then. What solution do you think can be proposed to solve that particular problem? If you had the leverage and you had the lobby power and you had the ear of the government, what would you say needs to be done to solve this?
government need to work closely with private sector and listen to them carefully. But if the private sector not come forward, then we can't. I alone can collectively come up with an idea on top of my head. What a
If I
really
may
big problem.
interject here, I'm not trying to cut you off, Mr. Governor. I just want to interject before you move on that we have never seen a government more proactive with private sector, more private sector driven than the government that we have right now.
I
So
agree with
right
you.
away, this is a government that works with private sector, very close to private sector. We just came back with a delegation of private sector, 100 and something private sector members went to DR to visit factories, to see their businesses, how they do their business, to see if there are synergies with us, see if we can, partner with them and get, companies involved over there and DR companies involved over here. So I think government is on the right track in terms of engaging private sector, listening to private sector, and trying to make those changes that will take our country forward. With that
Samantha,
being said, yeah,
that's,
with that
that's,
being said, the labor shortage problem that we are having, like you rightfully said, it's not only a government issue because private sector are the biggest employers in the country. So, in terms of
Well,
skilled
let me
workers
interrupt you there.
and
I still think
laborers.
government is the largest employer, not so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was just about to say in terms of like where our country is going in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the building out that is happening right now. Because I know the conversation revolves what is happening, the building out of Guyana 2030. That's what is happening right now. So yes, I do believe the private sector should jump on board and said, hey, because I know, like you said, one of the biggest employer in Barbados, Mr. Nan Prasad, he came to me, he's like, Sam, I had to bring in skilled people. That's why I said, I don't think we laborers is a problem. I think skilled people are the problem. The guy had to go to India to bring in the number of skilled worker to help him man his factory, run his factory, and to implement technology when it comes to production and operation.
but Samantha, that's a
I find
good
it,
point.
I find it interesting.
As a president for the New Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, you just say Nan Prasad went out, and which I mentioned earlier, he took a lead role as a private sector individual and take the lead to bring employers from India. He also bring in laborer from Venezuela. Why the other private sector members and who sitting down complaining for shortage of labor does not take lead role like that rather than depend on the government?
Well,
That's my argument.
let's step back a minute. I haven't heard any businessmen, any entrepreneurs sitting back and complaining about labor shortages.
None.
I've heard the government say that there's a labor shortage. So when you say why is it that we're hearing private sector people complaining about labor shortage, I'm not sure that that's fair to them. You gave a good example with Nan Prasad, but I think across the board there are employers and there are entrepreneurs who see the need and are bringing in labor as needed where specific skills are required. Restaurants are bringing in foreign chefs. Hospitals are bringing in foreign nurses and doctors. So you're seeing it all over. But this takes me back to the interesting point that Ms. Reed raised, which she said that she finds that the government has for the first time and more than ever before, been interfacing with the private sector in order to solve problems. And I hear her example about a trip to the Dominican Republic. I'm not sure that single example justifies the conclusion she draws. And I wonder if there are specific examples she can give of where interactions with the private sector by the government have lent to genuine results that she can point to and show us.
Yes, Timothy. Genuine results, meaning results where government has interfaced with private sector and solved a particular problem.
Well, I just gave an example, and Gobind did too, about where an individual had an issue and went abroad. So I talked about bringing in the foreign nurses at the hospitals and foreign chefs at the restaurants, and in the service industry, you will see that individuals are solving their problems.
I have seen that too.
When you spoke about government involvement so as to solve problems, the example you gave about a trip to the Dominican Republic didn't convince me.
No.
So I was asking if you could give some specific concrete examples.
Forgive me. I was just emphasizing how closely the government is working with private sector on getting them involved in trade and investment and all this sort of stuff. It was an example where you can see the government
working closely
working with
and you're taking a lot of pictures and a lot of people are seeing all of these nice trips, like the dozens of people that went to China. It looks very nice. Yeah. But when I'm asking you for concrete results rather than nice, pleasant trips to China where you shake hands, I'm asking for concrete results rather than politicizing. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do understand. There were a few MOUs that was signed with a couple of companies over there and the private MOUs. Sector. Yes, yes.
I see.
Jonas, let me add here a little bit. But look, I listened to the government appealing to private sector to come on board. I saw that clearly over the past years. Now, I had a meeting with the vice president and the president of ASHNI and two others personally. And the private sector conversation came up. I was the first to be very bold about it. Private sector does not represent 90% of the business in this country. Let me take Berbice for example. You have over 3,000 plus business registered in Berbice. How many make up the three chambers? Maybe less than 150. So when the government is asking private sector to be more, come on board, you think the same set of man will be in the 20, 25 years who sit there right now, except the New Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, which happened lately where Samantha was elected as president. Look around the rest and you tell me it's a recycled set of the same set. And you know what? They don't want young, vibrant people with like us with ideas to push, chamber forward to get maximum from government. They sit there, some of them, I'm using the word some because some is my friend. Most of these businessmen, wife and children sit abroad in some fancy house and they're running the business here and want to sit at the private sector, making decisions for the rest of the businessman in the cake shop. So what you have now, you have these real business people who are at the lower level is not interested in the Chamber of Commerce. What I see now from the Amsterdam, and which Samantha reached out to me if I want to be a member of that, because I was a victim of the Chamber victimized people too. If you are from X or Y political party and them guys does nothing here, your application going like an election, a general election. Some people application will fly through. This is wrong because you cannot do this and expect government to look at certain private sector differently or certain chambers, because government have an ears on the ground. Because you can say, well, we from Berbice or Quarantine Chamber of Commerce, and then you have 10 or 12 members sitting there constantly making decisions, and when you watch the membership, it dropped by 80%. Now this is where government, like I said, if private sector, I know private sector, agriculture, rice farmers facing labor shortage. The question is, some of them join the chamber. How many chambers stand up and represent that? How many?
Again,
Samantha mentioned a good example. I didn't see nothing in the press. I see Robert Passad make it in the press.
Again,
Ashley touched on it before.
I myself have a difficulty with vague expressions and nice sounding cliches. So indeed, you always hear some politician going public to talk to the private sector and say, y'all, and to use your words, come on board, or go and talk to the bankers and say, y'all got to do this and we need to work together. And those nice sounding words that really are meaningless. They don't take you forward in terms of a holistic, comprehensive policy that this is what our economic plan is going to be and this is how we're going to implement it. And unless we can have a discussion that throws away those cliches and those nice sounding sound bites and really gets to the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of here's a problem and here's a solution and this is how we arrive at the solution. You could make those nice sounding things about y'all come on board and we're all one Guyana and let's take a nice trip to China with the favored few. And as you say, it's the same faces you see all the time going on these trips. Nothing more is happening. But unless we are seeing the creation and the maintenance and the implementation of systems designed to solve the problems that we are seeing, you could say, come on board and let's be one Guyana all the time. It doesn't move us forward. Now, interestingly enough, it seems to me that the issues that we discuss peripherally as sidebars need to be front and center. I like your example, Gobin. You talk about NIS. And a lot of these institutions and these systems have existed all the time. But the politicians, the leaders on both sides during their respective governments, have allowed them to deteriorate and crumble until they are
the voicemail box of 1
So,
8.
as you say, no one, very few people bother about NIS for their employees or are honest in terms of their PAYE declarations for their employees. But even if that old existing system that we got from the British 50 years ago could be enforced in a way that is proper, the employees would have more autonomy because they wouldn't be entirely dependent. They'd know they'd have that cushion. Unions would be empowered and would be stronger. And all of those things tie together. And to me, when Samantha is talking about the technical training that is needed, we need to see the government saying, these are our technical institutes. This is what they teach now. So you got welding, you got mechanics, you got electrical work, things that we know they're teaching now, but reformulate them in a way that is geared to the needs that we see going on now. So you're both, I know, contractors, you're both involved in that. We need to see a standardization of certification of plumbers and electricians and masons and joiners. We need to see them certified in a way that is standardized because we got a lot of cutlass carpenters around the place pretending that they know what they're doing and giving shoddy work. And if the government would say to us, here is the curriculum at the technical institutes. Here is how we are going to change the curriculum. And here is the certification that is standardized. So you can be assured that your electrician shows you the certificate. That's a quality of work that is coming out. That is where you will get confidence to me and in the type of work the electrician is giving you, but also that electrician after all will have a reputation that he can work for the foreigners who are coming in. And he can start replacing those same foreign people that the foreigners are importing to do the work that our local folks can't do. But we need a clear policy and a clear implementation of a policy rather than nice sounding sound bites about y'all come on board. And that's something that bothers me.
Jonas, the government do have those system or some policy, or I should say some training center. In Berbice alone, you have 3 or 4 that I know of. You have the Port Moran Training School, have students there, they give them some finance, the transportation, and they, to come and train, they get a certificate, they find replacement in the region and private sector too.
What's the name of the certificate?
I think it's coming out from the Daisuku Training School it was before. I don't know what they call it now at Port Moran.
And what is the equivalency that it has? We're talking about standardization and recognition. We're not talking about some cheap piece of paper that you go and get.
No,
I will concede to you that the Gaisuko certification that used to happen when Gaisuko was running, that had a lot of credit. And those people learned a lot, and those people had a high standard. I will agree. But
Yes, I agree.
that has existed for many years. You can't
But
say,
it's
"Oh,
still there.
wonderful, congratulations to the government." That's something
It's
that's been
still
there for
there, you know.
30 years.
The same center is still there training, and then they bring in TI now. You got two TI embodiments. Those after graduate, they will send these skills worker with the certificate. I don't know what I mean. I went to one graduation. They send them to the employer probation period, and that they go in there with skills. But like I mentioned earlier, United States and Canada and Britain is making it so attractive for skills workers that they're sucking it up. So well, that's one of the problem. The skills
That is
workers
not
are
a big
leaving.
problem. That has been a problem from eons ago.
Even in North, like
Precisely.
some Anglers
That's
say
a
the same. But
long-standing problem because we
Yeah,
don't pay our people enough.
exactly. They're not
And
incentives. There are no incentive. Even if you
incentive,
don't
right?
get
The word
paid enough,
incentive.
well,
there's
Ms. Reid,
added incentive.
let me make this suggestion to you. That
Thomas.
given that the government is the largest single employer,
Mm-hmm.
and given that the government controls parliament and can impose minimum wage requirements, and given that the government is flush with funds from oil money, wouldn't an easy solution be to raise the minimum wage, and especially in the public service where you need the clerical and the managerial and the supervisory level people to
Did
such
they
an
raise
extent?
it though? Wasn't it raised to 60,000?
60,000.
No, it's 80. I think it's 80.
80,000.
No, that where is that right
No,
now? Remember, it was
in the
farmers.
meantime, they're spending hundreds of billions to build a road on the railway embankment in Guyana, in the East Coast, that's going to be useless. Hundreds of millions to build another road at Conversation Tree that's going to be useless. So when you see the disparity in the amounts awarded in contracts of dubious benefit, and you can't give your employees 500 United States dollars, and yet you want to say, oh, there's a shortage of skilled labor and they're all migrating. And then finally, you want to say that we're interacting with the private sector and they're doing such a good job. I think that we're not being honest with ourselves.
Hi, sorry to interrupt everyone. We actually have a caller online who has a question.
Sure.
Caller, can you go ahead?
Hello, good day, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, you could go ahead with your question.
Okay, good night. Am I talking to the panel directly?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are, sir. Just go ahead, please. We're hearing you very well.
Okay. Hi, good night, everyone. This is Mr. Wilson out of Trinidad and Tobago, a diaspora. I'm listening to the panel in terms of the labor shortage. So far, Gobin is on point in terms of the government must work with the private sector in all areas because it is a mixed economy where both government and private sector work hand in hand. One of the challenge with Guyana, I think, and not only we could look at the government challenge, but the past government leading up to the oil find is that you will have repercussion and challenges in the labor force if they really want to transform Guyana economy to an advanced developing economy. So that is where the challenge lies, in that they haven't taken succession planning and strategies for sustainable development. Now the problem is, and it's three questions I want you all to take into consideration and answer. Question one, did the Ministry of Labor leading up to the oil find have done any research, quantitative research on the ground in terms of the unemployment rate in Guyana? Let's say at least for the past 10 years or 15 years. Have they done any research relating to know that there is an unemployment shortage or not, and which area? Question two, in terms of the salary scale, as what Gobin said, one of the biggest challenges in Guyana in terms of the salary scale that is not compatible to the average poor man or minimum wage standard of living. Have the government do an analysis or a feasibility studies, since we have the inflation, the Ukraine Russia war and the different challenges that probably they have to come up with a possible solution, either to increase the salary or put welfare system in place so that they could basically alleviate some of the challenges the poor class face in the economic challenge. As they done that, question 3, did the government or the private sector, as what Govind say, publish the amount of jobs or the job specification or the positions that they have, that they are lacking, so that the general public could see, and also offer a comprehensive or a suitable package for the Guyanese. And if they haven't get much of the applicant, then they could seek outside labor in terms of this. Have they done all these? Because when I used to live in Guyana, you're not seeing these news media publishing much vacancy. It's a shoo thing whereby you call and whoever they get inside. So we want to know in terms of proactive, if they have done the advertisement of all these jobs, etc., to the general public by giving them the first opportunity or preference. Because the last government, I think they did at the APNU, they published a lot of jobs in the public sector, but one of the biggest challenges that the salary scale was very low. So I want to know if they have done all of these, both the government and the private sector. Thank you very much.
If I may answer the one with the minister, there is a Minister of Labor. Am I on? Yeah. Hello? Do you just hear me? Yeah. There is a Minister of Labor. I don't know if they have any feasibility done on the unemployment before previous 2020 and now, but what I do know, I did engage him once in a conversation about farmers and local businessmen paying employee benefits such as NIS and other benefits. And he said he was going to look into it. And I don't know if that's been done, if they're going around doing that. But from what I'm seeing in the area that I cover, I don't think it happened. Because I asked some of these employees who work with construction worker, some construction worker don't pay it, some of these farmers don't pay a dime for them.
Well, sir, I have to say, those were 3 very good questions. I had some reservations how you started, because you started with a comment that the government has to work together with the private sector. And I don't think there's anybody that will disagree with that. And I was afraid that you were going into one of the cliches, one of the sound good, feel good expressions, because of course government has to work with the private sector. But then you asked 3 very insightful questions that I appreciated. Insofar as you are asking if any data has been collected by governments, and I won't confine it to this government because I found the apathy of the previous government to be alarming as well. As to what specific needs are there, I have not seen anything done and anything published, but I hesitate to criticize for that specifically because, as has already been pointed out in this forum, if an employer has a need, it's really for that employer to do what he can to fill the need, and it's for the government at a more macro level to provide an environment where needs can be filled and institutions can be incentivized to get those needs met. So we were talking about the technical institutes and if they could be tailored, if the courses that they offer and the focuses that they have can be tailored to meet the emerging needs. That is one of the things I was thinking about. The second solution to me, to incentivize employers to use Guyanese, I would have a different tax structure. So I would charge Guyanese income tax at a smaller rate than foreigners working in Guyana. And I would charge foreigners a yearly amount to pay for their visa, their working visa in Guyana. And I would between those two, and I would also exempt Guyanese from certain taxes like property tax that I would impose on foreigners, so that if you could incentivize employers to employ Guyanese that way, you would have a situation where if you have a Guyanese engineer and a foreign engineer of equal standing, the Guyanese engineer is much more employable because the $500,000 that you pay in him, he will pay less income tax on that. He will pay less tax overall. The foreigner who is coming here because his employer is going to have to pay for his visa to work in Guyana every year is going to be looking for a Guyanese because it's cheaper. So there are ways to incentivize employers to hire Guyanese in a long-term and a medium-term way. And there are ways using the existing technical institutes. And again, I hasten to say to Gobin that these technical institutes have been around for decades, and they have not been tailored by our respective governments to meet the needs of the emerging markets as they come up. And that is disgraceful. But they can now be used that way so that you are incentivizing your employers to employ Guyanese, but you're also creating an environment where Guyanese, especially adult Guyanese who are already out of the school system, can get
If I
technical
may interject
to meet those
there,
needs.
if I may interject there, I think this government have, in some time in the past, stated that they are rebooting the training center in Port Morant to cater for hospitality and like oil and gas, not only like electrician or
They
plumbing,
already doing that.
but they already put it there already,
Yeah,
right?
they already do that at New Amsterdam and Herberton and Port
I
Moran.
know they were doing that at Tain at Port Morant. So
Yeah, they're
that
doing
might
that.
be one of your suggestions there, Tim. It's already been implemented.
I know there's a serious urgency in Berbice to show that something is being done. The problem I have is that the effort to revitalize Gaisuko is doomed. It's a bad decision. And even the most abject loyalist is not going to defend that as an economically sound decision. I do blame APNU for the way that they dismantled Gaisuko, but Gaisuko is failing and it is an impossibility to try to pretend it's going to be restored. That was all about politics, not about economics. Now, that being said, what is happening is that we still have to find a way in a region that is almost purely agricultural to link the training to the needs of the industry. And as Gobin said, if agriculture is your base, then has there been, and as the questioner asked, has there been data accumulated to say, well, these are the needs, these are the projections for where we see the economy in Berbice evolving to, and this is how we have tailored our institutes to meet those needs. And I haven't heard anything about that. All I've heard is in a vacuum, oh, we put in money here and we put in money there. But that's a pipe dream rather than a real policy, isn't it?
Yeah, Jonas, a region big as East Berbice, and your second, the last statement there that you haven't seen anything tailoring in that direction. Again, I come back to the if a region, one of the biggest regions, have 3 chamber of commerce, and none did not put forward that. We keep saying the government work in private sector. Does the private sector work with the government to push forward what you just said? One of the things you asked me earlier, if I would get the government, is what would I put forward for some of these labor shortage. One of the things come to my mind is that, like the gentleman called in there, is that if the employers are scraping for ends because it's merely agriculture in the region they raise farm, and if they don't want to pay the NIS for the laborer, I will suggest to the government, if they can, just to keep the workforce afloat, if they can pay the NIS for the laborer, if the employer don't want to, some way, some point, maybe some.
I'm sorry, if who can pay the NIS?
If the government can, they can contribute towards the NIS. If the employer don't want to pay, if not, we're gonna lose everybody.
Well,
at this point,
I employ some people, and if I hear the government is going to Region 6 to pay NIS for you as an employer, I'm going to ask them come and
no,
pay
I'm not saying you
NIS
should
for my
pay for you.
staff.
I'm saying if the
There has
shortage
to
of
be,
labor,
no, I'm sorry. We have to man up. And at some point, there has to be accountability and taking responsibility for yourself and your actions. And if you're employing people, you got to pay NIS and you got to pay PAYE.
I agree
That's
with
all.
you.
There's nothing
I
further than that as
am.
far as I'm
I'm a
concerned.
small contractor compared to, everybody else. I'm a small contractor. I started my company in 2017. I start with small procurement, small repairs on schools and so on like that. I had my first road contract in 2020, and I've built my business bit by bit, piece by piece, and I pay all my workers. I am like the best employer ever. Like I pay PAYE, I paid my taxes, and I'm a small person, but I want to do stuff the right way, and
Are
I
you
practice
encouraging
that.
the rest of
And
the
Ms.
member of
Reed,
the
can I
chamber
say
to do that?
congratulations and power to you? And
Yeah,
if we had
I
more
admire
like
that.
you, the test for me is to ask, how long have your employees been with you? You see, some people got such a high employee turnover that there's only one conclusion that you can draw. And some places you go and you see employees have been there 10, 15, 20 years. And it says a lot. But power to you, please keep it up. It needs to be done. But I had to challenge Gobin on that, because if you've got an obligation to pay a NIS, pay a NIS.
That was just a suggestion. But Samantha, as the president for the Amazon Chamber of Commerce, I mean, I don't know, are you touting the same thing that it take a lead role from what you're doing? Like, get the system in a smooth process for in order to keep employee and love them, or they love your company and love the job, to do what you're doing, paying your employee benefits. You're encouraging that. I show you have businessmen at your chamber. I know, I can tell you the chamber, some of the chamber members with pay zero, or some of these rice farmers pay zero to the employee. And these guys planting thousands of acres.
It is well known across Guyana. Everybody's trying to go through the back door or cut some
It's
corner.
illegal to
It's
employ
a
people. If
norm.
there is a labor
Like when
minister,
things are exposed now, it's because of the digital age. But these things have been going on for decades. This is stuff you grew up hearing, you grew up seeing. But what I'm saying, right? We have to have standards. Okay, we're chanting that we're this oil nation, we're going places, we're doing things. We are attracting so many countries coming here, wanting to do business, want to partner with our locals. Our locals are even corrupt. So I do believe that there is a precedence that needs to be set and standards that need to be upheld, and our people need to really step up to the plate and be accountable and say, listen, all right, this is how we used to do it, but there's a way. The ISO certification, all those standards. The On my site we do. Right now, I'm going through training for ISO certification. We have to go do site visits. We have to train. You guys hearing me? We have to
Yes,
train.
yes.
We have to train people on the ground. We have to make sure there's safety gears. They're wearing safety gears. You know what some of my guys are telling me? Oh, the helmet too heavy, or the gloves slightly slipping off their hands. But I have a site supervisor that has to make sure that they wear their safety gear, and we on site every week visiting sites, making sure that they do these things. So it's all about the follow through. It's all about you know holding our workers, and not only paying their INS, the NIS and all those other benefits, but getting what we need out of them as well, and getting them to understand that safety is important on the job sites as well.
I see someone send me a text about a protest in Blackbush. Okay, you hear me there? You lost me?
No, I'm afraid your voice has an echo. So I'm hearing your voice, but it's not an echo.
You hear me now?
What did you say? Could you repeat?
No, I saw someone send me a text about a protest in Blackbush for the rice farmer. So that's some of the problem we have, that
Well,
every region.
I find it interesting, and it's, to me, it's part of the apathy that we see in our leadership and have seen for so many years. You talk about enforcement, and Ms. Reed, again, I acknowledge you and congratulate you for the work ethic that you are preaching about here. But it's not so difficult to enforce. If you've got 1,000 acres of rice land and the 1,000 acres is under cultivation, there is a rule of thumb that you can figure out how many people are employed in the purpose of cultivating that. And therefore, if when you check, the owner or the occupier is not registering that number of people for the purposes of PAYE and for the purposes of NIS, it's relatively easy to cross-check. It's relatively easy to do spot checks in a shop in New Amsterdam or in a shop in Criverton, to go in to see how many people are there, porters and cashiers and that kind of thing, and to ask about an NIS card. It's not difficult. And yet,
But I have information too. I have seen NIS right now. They're doing a lot of campaign. They are going out there. They're coming to my business place, even other business places, that members of the chamber business places, and they're asking questions. So they are doing some of the work. I have been seeing some work done in terms of investigating, follow up, how many employees you have. You got this contract. How did you execute? Did you subcontract? I see them doing those things. I must say that.
yes, I've seen some movement. Are you hearing an echo when I speak?
No, I'm not.
Miss Reed, I think your device is echoing.
Oh, it's mine.
Yeah, because I'm getting the feedback back here.
If you could just rejoin
for us. Okay, just cut off.
Yeah, and just rejoin.
I must say that Ms. Reed is making a point, because I have seen some activity in NIS, but I'm afraid it's one of the institutions that needs some amount of reform. I hear so many horror stories of people who have retired and can't claim their benefits, or who are ill or widows, and there's no record, there's no proper record keeping. And the investigations done by NIS are sporadic, because they simply don't have the infrastructure, the facilities, the personnel to meet the needs, the growing needs of the society. We have to find a way that breaches of the rule is the exception rather than the norm. And I think we'll agree that right now is the norm that people cut corners in terms of their obligations with NIS and PAYE and that kind of thing. And if we can incentivize our employers to get on board that way, and I think it can be done. One thing that I will give credit for, it is something that we had been campaigning for and preaching about for many years, and I see that this year the government has made a start by passing legislation that is almost good enough. It needs some tweaking. The single electronic ID card. Yes. I think that if we followed what they do in the States, in England, in Barbados, even closer to home, where you have a social security number that belongs to you. So your TIN number, your tax identification number, that you get when you're born, you keep it until you die, and it is used to identify every single transaction that you are doing. So your driver's license, your tax returns, how you hold your property, how you go to vote, when you retire, your NIS payments when you retire. If that single number identifies you and keeps track of you, I think that will cause much more transparency in your business affairs, in meeting your obligations, even to go for jury duty, which I'm sure neither of you has ever done. To go to court as a juror is something that the system has broken down, a system that we inherited and allowed to lapse because of poor leadership. And that, I think, having a single TIN that is identifiable and is accessible for your passport, for everything, I think that will solve a lot of problems, but it needs to be implemented properly. And I will say it needs to be implemented by the whole House in Parliament, not by half of the House. If we keep half of the people out, if we exclude half of the people, we will have sporadic hops, and then as soon as another set of people are in power, it'll all be stopped and scrapped and started over again. And we can't have that. For continuity, we need policies that embrace and include everyone, whether you like them or not. That's another failure I've seen on both sides that hopefully will change.
One of the failures I seen is said both sides of the House. You have member of parliament represent all different 10 constituency, 10 region. Some MPs are 3 per region. How many of these MPs from either the opposition or government? I can tell you from the opposition side, I don't see they have a place where these people who voted for them, that they can go reach them and see what some of the problem or some of the thing they're facing. You know, say I don't know Years ago, you have MPs have a day where they will go in certain communities. Now, go into parliament and make noise, and without you not listening to the people at the bottom, things like what we are talking about could have been addressed at the national level, so government would have seen it discussed in parliament. I don't know when the last one of the opposition MPs or actually say some of the MPs in government go around in communities, meeting people and have discussion.
You know, the system that we have is designed for an elected dictatorship, and we all know it. And when I hear people talk about, oh, the opposition haven't done this and haven't done that, the same response I make now, I made before 2020. And that response is that as long as you've got 33 votes in that house, the opposition can talk cheese and do cheese, and you still win. And the recent legislation that was passed, a number of amendments were suggested by David Patterson, for whom I hold no brief and I have no regard. But a number of amendments were suggested by him, some of which were good, but all of which were ignored, all of which were intended to decentralize power away from the minister, so that the minister doesn't all by himself appoint the commission, make decisions, review what the commission does. Self-appointed dictatorship. He was saying, let other people have scrutiny of these transactions for greater transparency. That's all. And they were all ignored. And the legislation was passed with all power given to the minister because they got 33 seats in the House. So I hesitate strongly against criticizing any opposition that only has 32 seats and therefore zero voice. Because after all the hooting and quarreling and fighting and criticizing, the legislation passes by the majority. And that was true now, and that was true 5 years ago.
May I remind you,
the people in power enjoy the dictatorial power that our system gives them.
In 2011, I remember clearly that's one of our foundation of campaigning in 2015, that when, with Nigel Eugene, etc., when we go in power 2015, that's what's going to be changed. What happened? The opposition went in and find it rosy and a silver platter and shelf it. So now Patterson is preaching it from a distance. He were there, right? So
you're absolutely right. I agree with you.
Let me go down.
I agree with everything you just said. The two parties like it when they're in power in their turn. One of the discussions we were supposed to focus on was the issue of migration. I think we agree that the only way to keep people here is to give them the confidence that they will have the freedoms and the standard of living as close as possible to what they will get in those areas where there's greener pastures, where we see greener pastures. We know, and we talk about it anecdotally, any bottom house you go in Guyana, people will talk about how hard Guyanese work when they go abroad. And the truth, that is the truth. There is a truth that Guyanese will work 2 or 3 jobs. But the incentive is very simple. That if by your own labor, by your own effort, you can see your way, so you can pay for your house and pay for your car and pay for your holiday, you will happily work damn hard just to achieve that every year. And I think that Guyanese have the confidence when they go away that by their labor, they will achieve those things. And I think we'll also agree that however much you want to tout the $80,000 that you want to pay your public servants, that's not going to give them a house and a car and a holiday and the ability to pay a mortgage. So for me, a first step is we got to ensure that we start paying our public servants much, much more than we are paying them, so that we can attract better quality of people and we can keep them here in that confidence.
So not plenty. Most of the people who are migrating from Berbice is not people who migrate because of a salary. You have wealthy people leaving. Look, drive around Berbice, you see big house with fancy this and that, they are leaving. That's why I mentioned earlier, better way of life. Now, how I have a friend migrate. He was planting and he achieved so much gas station. What salary he need? He gone overseas because maybe he saw a better community life or however you want. Come back to what we have. We have in Guyana one of the best local government system in terms of policy and how it should work. The question is, does our NDC and municipality and region councillors is fulfilling that to make their community rosy, clean, attractive? Street must be okay. Government is doing a lot of infrastructure in street, that's one. Does the councillor lend an ace to the resident to make the community better, a proper play field? A person gonna live, not sorry, I can tell you Burbishan, most of the Burbishan that I know are living now or been living before, these people have businesses. I mentioned some of the members of the Chamber of Commerce. What I know, them is alone here, making the money, take the foreign exchange and go with it. But who you think change the money in front of all this market? You think it's...
Ms. Reed, can I ask if you agree that migration is a problem of the wealthy in Guyana?
You said the wealthy, I said some, I'm talking...
And can I ask if you agree that the local government system in Guyana is as good as Harbhajan says, and the failure is with the local government people?
I'm saying the system is good, but the people behind the system...
The government system needs work. From the chamber perspective, I can speak on. There needs to be a little bit more collaboration with the private sector and the local government. There's a missing link there. Even with the town councils and the municipality, there's no cohesiveness or working together with them. I'm speaking from the chamber aspect on that. In terms of migration, if it's a problem,
your chamber.
Yeah, there's a gap in my chamber, but I did engage with the chairman of Region 6, Mr. Armagon, and we will be sitting down soon in terms of doing a framework on the way forward and how we work together to, to make the community safer, or whatever program we have rolling out, they will work with us on that. Also, the mayor reached out to me, the new mayor that we have in New Amsterdam. He also reached out to me in terms of collaborating and working with me as well. But there is that breakdown, that systematic breakdown that always happens. In terms of the I just think Guyanese people like to go away. Like Guyanese people leave. They just think there's a bed of roses waiting somewhere for them. Like there's a lot of people that are unemployed that don't even want to work. We are so naive to the fact there's a lot of unemployment in New Amsterdam. Recently, before the elections, there were how many part-time workers? There's still a lot of part-time workers, and don't have full-time jobs. I just think it's a matter of us, of Guyanese people. It's something that is embedded in our people that needs to change. We need to work for the life that we want, and the same life you can have over here, I believe, because I have worked really hard to get where I'm at, to build my company. I'm still working every day. I just came from work and do this interview. I was on a site waiting there for concrete to arrive, to pour. Some of my workers, they left at 5. On Mondays, they don't come to work. One of the guys, he went home today, he's smoking on the site. So there's so much. So there's not one thing.
Let me tell you some of the benefits of some of the agency in every region, Jonas. You need to know this. You have an RDC, fully equipped with 30 councillors. They call it RDC councillor. They're like member of parliament. You have an REO, you have deputy REO. You come down, you have the Rice Producer Association, which is RPA. You have the Water Users Association. You have 18 NDC across this region, 300 and something councillors. You want to tell me if these councillors do 10% or 15% of what they sign up to do, we're not going to have a better community?
Ms. Reed, I hear what you're saying. And to answer Gobin, we got a parliament with 65 people, and we got ministers coming out our ears, and our country is rotten. So I don't think that it is fair to say there's so many people involved there, and therefore it should be good. I think, as Ms. Reed says, you have to look at the system to see where the failings in the system are. Now, in my experience, failings usually stem from money. And when I look at the structure of the RDCs and the NDCs, the fact is that their power has been taken away from them by the failure of central government to allow them financial autonomy. It's all well and good to say we got NDCs everywhere, and we do, and they've been there for decades. But every year their position is worse because they're not allowed to charge rates that allow them financial autonomy and give themselves the power to fix our drains, fix our roads, clear our rubbish, ensure that you adhere to building codes, ensure that you adhere to residential areas and commercial areas to do the job to make Guyana a civilized, good place to live rather than a place of complete havoc and chaos that we are accustomed to know with broken roads and bad drains. And the reason that they can't do it is because anytime they need to meaningfully do something, they got to go to central government for money. And the reason they have to go to central government for money is that they're not allowed to charge rates and taxes. Now, I don't want to personalize this, so I'm not going to ask you to answer this question, but consider how much you pay for rates for the property you own, as opposed to the real value of that property. And what's happened in Guyana is that in the NDCs, in the various regions, there has not been an increase in the assessed valuations of the properties since 1996. And the reason that's been done is that central government does not want the NDC to have that autonomy. If the NDC had an autonomy that you would charge rates on current valuations on properties so they had the money to do their jobs, a couple things would happen. First of all, you personally, because you're paying a meaningful amount as rates now, would be on the NDCs behind. Anytime your garbage was picked up late, anytime you got too much grass in your parapet, you would be quarreling because you're paying a meaningful amount. Secondly, they'd have enough money that their personnel would be paid so that people would want the job. People would want the job because it gives them independence, not because they need to kiss the behind of the government. Right now, that's what's going on. Right now, they take the job and then they got to go and beg the government because they need money. So if you allow them the financial autonomy, that fixes the system that Ms. Reed is talking about. It's about systems. It's not about personalities. And if we could fix the system and decentralize that power from central government, you won't have a situation where central government coming to build some little back road going into a back dam in the NDC and putting up a sign to say Government of Guyana project and wants to get praise for that. Because that's a job the NDC and the RDC should be doing, using rates and taxes and using a transparent system of finances that they have been disempowered from doing because the central government refuses to do their job and allow properties to be valued and allow them to charge rates. We're talking about systems, and we have to understand the underlying system before we can solve the problem. That's what the system is for.
The government contests the local government election. Two major political parties jump in. GCOM did a poor job, GCOM commissioners or chairman, by not marketing the local government properly to the local man at the bottom, so for independent people to run. And if an independent candidate would have win one or two of the NDC, well, then maybe you would have some change. But if the political party jump in and win it, Jonas, what you have? They were in the race.
Like if they have no money, you've wasted time. Every single housewife knows that she needs so much money a week to buy food. She needs so much money a week to buy cleaning products. She needs so much money a week to take care of her children. You budget. Just like that, the NDC is required under statute every year to say this is our budget of how much we will need to run our neighborhood for the year. And when they do that budget is how you mathematically calculate the rates you're supposed to be paying. But when they do their budget, the minister vetoes and they don't have money. And you could put Gentle Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad to run the NDC. And if they don't have money, the NDC will not run efficiently. We have to decentralize power. And if I challenge you to tell me, what is the budget? What is the budget that your NDC you had last year and how did they meet that budget? Because you can't tell me that. It goes down to money, because without money, you cannot run a proper organization and the NDCs can't run.
I would agree that they have to get bailout from the central government, and central government did give them subvention money. But what I can tell you, even when we were in government for the past 5 years, when we were in there, we allow and still continue that NDC prepare their own constituency budget, sent it to the RDC for what need to be done. But as you said, if you're going to stall and increase rates and taxes, well then it depends surely on central government. I get your point there. But NDC make their own budget with municipality and send it to the RDC, then to Ministry of Finance.
And the budget is never met, and therefore they can't do their job. And therefore you got to blame central government for disempowering them, because central government wants to hold tight to power in every single aspect and is destroying the country.
I can't
We live
see
in chaos.
a man own a gas station, own a big rice mill or whatever he own, and he paying 1,400 Guyana dollar a year, which is 7 US. And that's
So you've just agreed. You've just agreed.
I agree that it needs to increase, but
that the system is broken. But you got to place responsibility for that broken system where it belongs. Responsibility for that broken system belongs in the majority in Parliament, because that's where they can fix it.
Mr. Jonas, private sector is a powerful body. May I remind you?
They have 0 votes in Parliament, my friend, and therefore they can't change that minister's speech.
They can push. They can push. They can find a way. Until you get.
Ms. Reid, as the head of the Chamber of Commerce there, I'm sure that you will lobby and try to encourage central government to give more autonomy to the RDCs and the NDCs so that they can charge proper rates and therefore be more accountable to the people that they're interacting with face to face.
Most certainly.
Are there any other ways you think that that problem can be solved? Because I do think that one of the issues with people who are migrating is they're fed up of flooding, they're fed up of poor roads, they're fed up of garbage. Me personally, I pay more to the garbage collected than I pay rates and taxes every year. That shouldn't be the case.
You said something earlier, Tim, when you mentioned that every housewife knows how much money she needs. Not everybody have good budgeting skills. Not everybody has, financial skills. Where many of us are not coming from a background where we know what the budget is, and we are placed at the helm of these institutions, and we run them like if they're our homes, and we can't run our homes. Hence why I think in some instances, I'm not saying central government is, wants the full autonomy, but in some cases I see why they would want to intervene, because I have seen firsthand, some of these municipalities or the town, for example, the town council, how they run the operation, and it's not, in a feasible way, and what they do with the money, and how much there's no accountability and so on. So
I think if you spoke to your average Guyanese voter, the criticism that you just made, the average Guyanese voter would make that same criticism in spades of the political party that he does not identify with. So if you asked a PNC loyalist his opinion on the work ethic and integrity of our PPP leaders, or if you asked a PPP loyalist about the work ethic and competence of the PNC leaders, I think you'd get the same response. But that's what democracy is, isn't it?
Yes, it sure is. It's a dilemma.
Well, I think that if you reduce it to the level of the RDCs and the NDCs, where you have a more personal interaction, I mean, the faces of the people you're dealing with at that level.
Yes.
I think that personal accountability, so that when your garbage doesn't get picked up and you go and quarrel and they know that you will not be voting for them, I think at that level we would be more likely to move away from the blind political loyalty that we have at the national level. And maybe that is what's scaring our politicians too.
I don't know, because in New Amsterdam, we have a garbage problem. We have a flooding problem. And to no avail, every year at a particular time, the people would step out, the businesses would complain. It would go to all levels, and it would be temporarily fixed, and it go away, and then it comes back. So I don't know. I really
with,
don't
with,
know.
with all fairness, there was a lot of improvement. Maybe we may not have a decentralized government, the NDC, but I must say that I've been around, across the country, and prior to 2015, the system has been improved a lot. Especially, it may not to standard, but we
Yeah,
don't
I
have
don't
the
doubt.
type of flooding like before. We have
I don't doubt that at
proper
all.
with the drainage are improving. It's not
I
100%. There's no
I
silver bullet can fix it overnight. I sure what Jonas said there, or we see somebody's listening, that
mhm.
so with the increased rates and taxes, but the NDC and municipality across Guyana, regardless if the population one, their municipality, there are some improvement because these days with social media and all these things, soon as you slip up, is on Facebook
Yeah.
or somewhere. So it is improving. But I am a strong believer at the end of the tunnel that Guyana will get there. It may not happen overnight, but I would like to see the rates and tax increase so business people and people who they abroad are running the business here pay a fair share of taxes, not on 13 or 1400 Ghana dollar per year.
Are we
That is
we
what
are
I mean.
seeing safe spaces set up in communities. I'm seeing work done even in New Amsterdam and Curvaton. There are some safe spaces. There slated to be a few more to be set up for, like, elderly kids. We're seeing drizzle of everything trickling down. But I mean, we want to see more happening. Yes, we want to see collective cooperation with the NDC, with the private sector. And like I said, this is a private sector government. They are working close with the private sector, and they want to see the private
Amante,
thrive.
you keep saying private sector. I mentioned earlier, I had a meeting with the vice president, and there was a discussion, and the private sector the discussion came up for one of the minister reach the private sector. I
Mm.
objected. I said the private sector does not represent the
Well, I agree.
3,000
I
plus. Hold on. Let me finish. The 3,000 plus business people in East Berbice. So I make a suggestion that why don't the minister reach the business people at the forum, right, rather than reach the 10% or 7% of people who say they represent private
I
sector.
think
And
that
you know
it's
what's going to be good in this country, or what's going to be good in this region? The day someone have the idea like me and form a Berbice Business Association and shelve the rest of them. Because I tell you that what happened, and it happened to you too. You don't want.
yes.
It happened to you. You was a victim of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. And if that happened to you, how many more it doesn't happen to? It happened up here. A group of men, and I don't want to go around the race line when it comes to members being in the Chamber of Commerce. We have to, until grown men get off this racial or whatever thinking they have, or the division thinking, and put their foot forward and support the One Guyana initiative. The president is pushing that and calling them private sector. And you go around and look around how many people is member of the private sector. I'm using Berbice for one, like Jonas said. It's very rotten the way they did. Just imagine, a person like me being in business 21 years. I was 7 years with one of the Chamber of Commerce. Just because of the hateism, they could not even find my file because they staged it. And then you're talking about transparency and opposition, and you just doing the same crap. Y'all don't get me.
Very, very unfortunate, Mr. Gobin. That was very unfortunate. But that's something that shouldn't happen. But in all these institutions, they are bureaucracy, and they are a way that people go into these organizations and think they own them. And they
Period.
isolate other people. One thing that I've done since I've been president of the chamber is made it inclusive to all. So we have three different categories. We have the small businesses, medium-sized business, and we have corporate. That way, everybody have a voice, and we can speak for the people, and we can advocate on their behalf. Because not everybody can speak. Not everybody can, go to the top level. We are a member in the private sector due to chamber being a subdivision of the private sector. So if we have issues within our chamber that I can't take to someone, I take it to the private sector and they take it further. So we are a voice for the people, and we're chanting development in our community, and we want to build small business. We want them to be in compliance. All these things that we're speaking here about labor, about training. These are things that I have in my little manifesto for whatever time I'm going to be there at the chamber to push the chamber forward, to push the
I
members.
admire, I
So
admire you.
I'm working with corporate to implement all these. The Center of Local Government. I have volunteers coming to help our members to get set up, let them understand where the opportunities are. People used to stop me on the road and be like, "Sam, how come you there? Or why you were there? How you reached there?" People information. What I found, it stops at certain levels. It doesn't filter down, and that's one thing I'm trying to do. As I get information, I spit it out to my members. I send it to the group. Have statutory meetings. I let my members know what is happening, where opportunities are, what they can do to improve their businesses, how they can upscale. There's this local content
But,
certificate. A lot of
well,
members
as I
didn't
said,
know what. I
I
share that with
admire you.
their,
I
their
admire you for the courage and the drive that the position you're taking there now. But I wish if we would have that other places, and you're going places because you
well,
have an open mind. Let me
to
finish.
others that
You have,
there's enough for everyone if we
but
share
as I
our
mentioned, you are going
yeah.
places. This is where private sector should shoot, because whatever benefit the people is what's more important. Rather than keep two statutory meetings to disqualify a man application, that was waste of time, right? It happened to you and it happened to many others. But what I'm saying is that the government have an ears on the ground, so they know which private sector, which chamber is working for the best interests of the people and who's pushing policy. And I listen, like Timothy told you, that if you can advocate for certain things, and you should truly say yes, you will. How many more other chamber do that? I admire a guy like Rafiq. He was the former president for the Central Chamber, and a few others. I can go on, but how we need, if we have 10 people like us in this region, we can get the government to come in and start to do things. You can remember, I don't know if you read up on it, 2016 when I proposed the first all-weather road in 50 something year plus, which called the 50-year 59 all-weather road. It was to open up more new lands because farmer was bombarded with high rent, 15 to 20,000 per acre. Today that road, the PUP government make that road a reality. I also put in forward another proposal. How many chambers doing that? They only circle what's benefit themselves, some of them. We must be frank with it. That's why I call in on the government. If you're going to reach business people, do them at the forum. Don't lean your hat and chamber, because chamber only represents 6 or 7% of the business people or their members. I can prove that to you, that how many registered business you have in East Morbius. Over 3,000 plus. How many is on the chamber? Less than 150? All three chambers. And once you got migration, Jonas, you're going to have labor shortage.
Again, I think that's a bit simplistic. We've had migration for decades, and we've had unemployment for decades. What's going on is that as the economy grows because of the free oil money and the growth of the ancillary services, you have a demand for professional employees, clerical employees, skilled employees. So people who can operate heavy machinery, people who are mechanics, or have electrical knowledge or welding knowledge or anything like that.
Labor is the biggest short.
So it is a need for employees with specific skills, and we do need to ensure that as a medium and long-term measure, we are directing our education institutes to meeting those needs. I want to congratulate you, Ms. Reed, on your approach, and also to acknowledge and to reinforce what you said, because to my mind, that's much more important than the effort of any individual. As an individual, you do the best you can, and I celebrate you for that. Good for you. But I also like what you say, that it's about the system, and it's about ensuring the system is good, so that it's not just, to my mind, enough to be fair in how you allocate responsibilities and share information. That is an excellent way to manage, and I appreciate that you are doing it. But I think that at a leadership level, and this is what we're not seeing at our leaders in government, you have to show a system of transparency so that a person doesn't have to rely on you personally to do the right thing. A person should be able to go online into a system that makes information available on an equal playing field. That a person needs to know he's paying a fair rate of tax and that somebody else isn't getting a tax exemption to give him an advantage. You talked about local content. A person needs to know what the rules are for local content, not changing, shifting goalposts, so that the conduct of business is predictable and reliable and you can operate in confidence. If those systems can be worked out, then we will move forward and people will have greater confidence and there will be greater prosperity and we'll see less migration. And then our education and our health systems also need symbiotically to work together to give our people the equipment, the wherewithal, the knowledge to meet the needs that are needed of the workforce now. And as I said, it can be incentivized by advantageous tax systems that are beneficial for Guyanese, that make foreigners work a bit harder than we do. It can be done, but it has to be as a matter of a system. And I think that once we can change the discussion to fixing our systems and decentralizing power from the small number of the cohorts and their family and friends, if we can do that, then people will be able to work autonomously, conduct their business fearlessly, knowing that there is a level playing field and a wider level of fairness in order to do their interactions. We can only hope.
Nice piece of wrap up. Yeah.
No, it's I haven't heard from Devin, but I know it's 9 o'clock and we usually close off at 9. So, Harbour John, could I ask you to make your closing comments?
My closing comment on the topic is that there's a bright future ahead for all Guyanese, and I will urge that, like, skills or non-skills, migrate to the US is not going to be an easy walk in the park. It's Guyana, you can still stand up and face it. Good things will happen, and I'm also appealing on the government to work closely with the business sector. I'm going to change my phrase to the business sector. Reach with business people. Don't hold and wait for Chamber of Commerce or a special private sector group. It's not going to happen. Business people need your ears. Rice farmers need your ears. Down there at the bottom, the lower class people, who is the bigger block of voters, need to talk to somebody. Please come down in the ground.
Ms. Reed, is there any wisdom you would like to give to me and Gobin before we close off?
I can't articulate as Mr. Gobin here, but I just want to say to our people, to Guyanese, to the workforce, that we need to change our work ethic. We need to understand where we're operating now, where we are now. Forget the past. We're on a trajectory where this country is moving fast, rapidly, at a rapid pace. There's lots of opportunities out there. I think young people should get on it. I think young people should get the training, get the qualification, get invested in what's happening here. And I think we all can make it. I know there's systems that need to be put in place. I know there's a lot of systemic work that needs to be done, but I think it also starts with us, So that's my little bit I want to say.
Well, I would like to say thanks to Globespan and to Devin, who is reliable and competent in his own area. And thank you very much for an interesting conversation. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the discussion. For me, I agree that it's about systems, and I agree that if there is no transparency, there will be corruption. There is no kickback in increasing salaries, but there is a kickback in the award of contracts done in a way that is untransparent. And we need to be careful to observe that, and hopefully one day there will be a system of transparency, where all the decision-making power isn't just in the hands of the central government to the exclusion of 50% of the country, which is what we've seen for the past 50 years. Until we get there, there will always be suspicion and distrust and a feeling of exclusion. But hopefully we'll get there one day. Thank you very much, Samantha. Nice meeting you, Gobin. We will talk again soon.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Nohar Singh. We will see you next week.
Bye.